G'day folks, continuing our International Women's Day month of March. This week we're bringing you Vivien Yap. And I know normally Naomi would probably be doing this intro, but it was me who interviewed Vivien. So I just wanted to express my insane admiration for one of the best real estate agents, male or female, that this country has ever produced in the great Vivien Yap. She has so much been an example of how all of the marketing ideas and strategies and branding ideas that we've talked about in this podcast for my entire career, when implemented correctly, can take you literally to the absolute pinnacle of your game. So understand that we've grabbed Vivien's greatest hits and compiled them together for you to create a masterclass in what it takes to not let anything get in your way, not gender, not markets, because she's been a female real estate agent at the top of her game in a state where it has been extraordinarily tough over the last sort of 5 years of my career that I've known of. Prior to that, it was still no day at the beach, but I tell you, a WA real estate agent doing as well as Vivien, it is testament to the marketing strategies, the mindset strategies, and all of the tactics in business, marketing, branding, and in real estate that this amazing woman has put into place. I'll stop rambling on. Here is the class, Vivien Yap. You want the normal real estate training you've been told a million times? Make cold calls, knock on doors. Best be switching off now, because in this podcast we go out of the box using unknown tactics, primarily that the real estate industry's never heard of, in order to get you called in more often, convert those listings, and get more success without the painful cold calling. Listen up, we're in for a ride. This is Real Estate Renegades. Once again, before we get to this week's episode, just real quick, if you wanted to take all of the prospecting, the marketing, the phone calls, the cold calls, the Facebook lead generation off your plate and outsource it, just check out what we've got to offer with our sponsor for this week, agentprospecting.com.au. I'll let that website do all the explaining for you, but essentially, you want to get this prospecting off your plate, agentprospecting.com.au. For now, we're on to the episode.
So Vivien's come out on stage today, and I just want to, the first thing I've noticed that she's brought with her is in her left hand, her phone. So maybe we might even get some live negotiating happening today if she gets the phone call. So look, Vivien's from WA. She is, you carry about 60 listings at any given time. Is that about right?
Yeah, we have about 40 active listings, of which 20 is sort of pipeline ready to go. And we do sometimes work with a couple of agents within our office so that we can actually share the listings together.
Sure.
Yeah.
And tell me what's the average commission in your marketplace?
Average about $39,000.
Okay, so it's quite a high area in WA. Vivien works in the western suburbs, which has been primarily dominated by a lot of the older real estate agencies in WA. So a lot of the boys, it has been... And I don't like to use that sort of term, the boys' club, but it has primarily been a lot of, it's been a difficult thing for a lot of the women to sort of get into, but Vivien has taken it by storm and has succeeded with great diplomacy and style, and she's just kicking ass now, so that's a really good thing to hear. One of the things that I wanted to talk to Vivien about today, I've probably got about 3 or 4 questions that I want to speak to her about. Some of them will be for the agents in the audience, and also some will be for the principals as well, because Vivien runs a very tight team also. They're high performers. How many agents have you got working with you at the moment?
Okay, we're working back from the journey that I had. 12 months ago, there's only 3 of us. And within 12 months, there's actually 12 of us now, with 2 more to come on board. So we do run a very tight ship, and every single day we have what we call a daily huddle. And except for Thursday, they might have an excuse not to come, but we still need to call in. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, we must have a daily huddle, and they have to have a really good excuse not to come. And it's only for a few minutes, even if it's for 10 minutes of communication, that's really important for us. Yep. And we do run a very good training session with everybody as well, every single week.
Every single week.
Yep.
So tell me, one of the questions that's sort of on my lips and possibly on a lot of people that have watched your journey, what do you think has been, what makes up the formula to be a successful Vivien Yap?
Okay, there's a combination of a few things. There's not one thing that I believe has worked for me solely, but I think there's 5 or 6 things in my life that's actually, positioned me to where I am today. So it comes down to, I think, mindset.
Yep.
You have to have a really positive mindset. You have to be very persistent, very determined to do what you're doing today. And I'm sure you are all here today because you all want to learn and you have a very positive mindset that you want to get to where you are today, to a different destination. So we all have that journey to work from. And I think you will then work out what it is that works for you. And I think number 2 is all about your organised day or your structure. And I think for me, I am not the most organised person here. And I think Phoebe and Moses knows that. They know exactly how I roll. I have a crazy day. It's almost like crazy chaos, yet it's under control. So, ideal days, ideal tasks might work for some people, but it doesn't work for me. I just know that I've got a bunch of jobs that I must finish. I must do them by close of business or by midday. They all need to be done. If it is not going to be done, I know that I have to do it within the next hour or 2. So ultimately, it comes down to what sort of a person are you? Do you believe that you can actually commit to those goals that you have set yourself? And I think bite-sized goals are a lot easier than those big, size goals, which you can't achieve.
Sure.
Number 3, I think accessibility. You need to be accessible to your clients, to your support staff, to your team members who could be, the reps that you have employed. If you give them the promise that you're going to help them get to the next level, then you have to do it. You have to actually, I suppose, deliver. You can't just promise them the world at the interview and then not be able to deliver. And it comes down to leads. It comes down to supporting them, mentally. That they've just lost a listing. How are you going to get past that? How are you going to help them get that next lead? If you have another lead, because that's going to help them get better, give that listing to them or share it with them so they can see exactly how you actually work. And they can actually see me working with that client because they can't close the deal, they can't actually get the transaction across, and that's when I step in. And
Sure.
I think another thing that I find that's really important is all about, setting different benchmarks for yourself. And, I am competitive, I do want to do well. But
You and I were speaking out the back before, and one of the drivers that you have is the fear of failure, but in a positive way, not in well, maybe it eats you a little bit, but you've learned how to be able to overcome that.
I think it's always difficult to lose a listing or, not be able to close one particular transaction because you've worked on it for, let's say, 3 months or, 4 months, and then you suddenly lose that listing to someone else because they have a better method of sale. But then, I don't blame it, on anything but myself.
Sure.
And because maybe I was not as good as closing, I didn't have the crucial conversation because I just didn't want to. And that's where I think if you have that fear of failure, it all comes down to where do we go next? What is next? So I always say, move on, let's move on to the next one. But if you are too comfortable where you are, then you will never grow because you might think you're number 1 today. You could be number 2, number 3, or you could be at the bottom of the ranks again very quickly. Because I do believe that I know that, it's good to stay right at the top, but the next way is to go down because there'll always be other people better than you. They work harder than you. But the main thing is I think you need to outwork your peers. You need to outdo yourself. Whatever you think you're already doing really well, ask the people around you to actually criticise you. And I always take criticism quite positively because I will always ask Moses, I'll ask Phoebe, I'll say, what have I done wrong?
Are you guys ever scared giving her that feedback?
No, because they know I don't bite, I will actually look at what I've done badly and I will then move to the next step and think, okay, I have not done this well enough and I think it's time to improve. And improvement is really crucial, I think, and I know that I still need to improve, which is why I'm here today. I'm still learning from everybody here today. And
Sure.
anything they have to say, I love to listen.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also spoke about adapting to different environments that we come across in real estate, because as we all know, no day is the same, no listing presentation is the same, no sale is the same. So how have you found that you've been able to adapt to your different clients that you come across?
My husband always calls me a bit of a chameleon when it comes down to wanting to get an answer, such as going to LA
Yeah.
in 2 days. Obviously, I had to start to get everything in order. But when it comes down to a listing presentation, I think you will always have a different style. You will be different when you're speaking to a lawyer or an engineer, but you'll also be different when you're speaking to someone who's suppose used your services for the last 2 or 3 transactions. You know what they're like. Sometimes I would even go into a listing presentation, list the property, but it's not at the home that I'm selling. I'll list the property and then I'll go and see the property maybe 7 days later or 14 days later. So you really want to mirror your clients. And when it comes down to adaptability, it's also quite a different market in WA, so very different. I suppose it is different from Sydney. So we need to be able to adapt to how we have our conversations when the market's really good. When the market's really bad, you also need to have those conversations with your clients, how to close a deal. So I think you need to adapt around the economy as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose one of the hardest things we have as real estate agents is delivering bad news. I mean, we all hate having to ring a seller and tell them that the home open was shit, no one was interested,
Yeah.
you got to drop your price or you're never going to sell it. How does Vivien Yap do this?
It's always difficult, and I think delivering bad news, you always want to make sure that you're the messenger. You're not really the person who's actually responsible for the economy. You're not responsible for their bad financial decisions that they've made. You're not responsible, for them not accepting the very first offer. And I've had that happen to me so many times, especially in the last 6 months. We've had to present offers whereby they've said no to, but certainly, I even had to say this one night because the lady was crying on the dining table, and I said to her, I can't put a gun to your head and made you take this offer. And that's what I'm telling you now. Don't let history repeat itself. If you do this, I don't know what to do next, and I'll have to give the listing back to you. And in some cases, it hits home, but in some cases, they're too proud, to accept the offer, and they'll blame you. And if there are people like that, I've learned my lesson, because obviously, I felt sorry for them, and I thought, oh, look, I'll discount my fee, because I want to help them with their own financial position. But that's not going to help them, because you can't reason with an unreasonable person, and sometimes you just need to walk away. But I think you just need to be honest. If you want to actually close that transaction, you've been showing the home for maybe 16 weeks and done probably 60 different inspections. You don't want to be a show person or a show girl. You're there to close the deal. So for me, it's all about making the close.
So do you make sure that when you first sign up with a listing, can you gauge at that point in time whether your seller's going to need you to be a little bit harder on them or a little bit softer on them? Can you because I know that you're very, very good at reading clients and the way to be able to react to them. And Glenn and I saw that when we were even in LA, when you were on the phone. You spoke to quite a few clients while we were over there, and there was one lady who you knew she had to take this offer because she wasn't going to get a better offer, and it was about the 3rd deal that you'd done with her, and she historically hadn't made great decisions when she bought. So are you able to sort of identify in the early stages of what your sellers are going to need from you when it comes to the negotiating side?
I can. Most of the time I can, but I'm not perfect at identifying those sort of clients, of course. But I think if you communicate with them regularly, you will start to see the different side, and obviously the different market that we're seeing and the different financial decisions they're making will impact on the final transaction that you do. And I think it's all about communication. If you've got really, really good daily communication with them or weekly communication with them, you will start to know. And some owners don't want to be contacted every day, but some certainly do want to be contacted at least twice a week. And during those times, have very meaningful conversations with them so you know what have they done and what will trigger them into accepting that deal. Because obviously the market that we're in could be a difference of 50,000 to about 2-3 million, and the one that we had to sell was a difference of about 1.2 million. So to take that loss is a huge difficulty for some families.
Yeah. So I want to just take you back to the early days of Vivien Yap. And I had the luxury of working with Vivien just for a very short period of time. We worked for the same company just as Vivien entered into real estate. I suppose the big question for a lot of us out there, even as rookies, but also if we're sort of stuck in a bit of a rut in real estate, which can be a trap that a lot of us fall into, what did Vivien Yap, the rookie, do to take herself in such a short period of time, because it's 5 years that you've been in the industry, from taking yourself to being number one in WA for the last 3 years? Yep. So it took you 2 years to get to number one in WA, and you consistently sat there for 3 years now. What did you do in those early days?
I think I actually did not do one single thing, but I did everything. So I did cold calling, which I hated. I had to call, up to about 7:30 because that's when people come home and they're more willing to talk to me. I wrote letters to everybody, and there's always a daily activity or weekly activity that I put in place in my diary. And I actually feel that I was a lot more organised, a lot more structured than I ever was because I had nothing else to do. I didn't have any listings, so why not, put myself in the actual room and start making my calls and, really go through the process of, writing thank you cards, go through the marketing process of having the pamphlets being dropped off. And I did do everything. One thing I actually found, be different. And obviously, what your peers are doing. Your competition, what they're up to. If you know what they do the opposite. When I talk about the opposite, I'm not saying don't do what they do, but try and work out a different marketing diary, different approach. And, I would go out of my way when I did have that one listing, I would actually invest in a lot of, I suppose, little gifts to clients who even come to my home open. I'm just so thankful that they're actually there because I'm just thinking...
we've got buyers.
Yeah, I'm so thankful because I'm thinking, well, one buyer who comes through, they must have a property to sell. So if I've got 30, maybe I've got a one in 3 chance because they're all property owners. If they're not property owners, they might have a friend who's a property owner. So really just working on that process. And, we were giving out sunshades for the car that's got my name on there. We were giving out sunblocks. I was giving out, wine, leather wine holders. I was just trying to get my brand out there. And then everything that I was giving out certainly, is all about a call to action as well. And certainly you do have to have market knowledge. So if you do understand your suburb really well, make it be known. Let them know that you're an expert in your suburb or in the area that you're selling in and have a track record. And I didn't have any sales track records at the time, but I certainly have sold a few properties and I actually conducted the sale of my 2 pharmacies and I did sell my own penthouse. So I said, well, if, I did give the listing to a couple of agents, they couldn't sell it, but I finally sold it. So I just use that as a story. And I think stories are very good because people relate to you instead of just giving them, what's just sold down the road. Of course, they can look it up, but explain to them how it all happened. You might know the buyer who actually transacted the sale. You didn't do the listing, but you know the buyer. So if you know the history of that, the chances of them liking you is a lot higher as well.
Sure. So Del, one last question before we finish up. One of the things that I've noticed about you, and it's we don't come across a lot of this, is that Vivien's a listing and selling principal, as you all know. It just seems that you've been able to nail that just perfectly because a lot of listing and selling principles, there's never that balance. It's never a great balance. One, you teeter here, either your listings and your sales fall off or the staff members aren't happy, but you seem to have been able to pull that off. Give me a couple of things that you've been able to do to help the principals out there in the audience today that has assisted you in being able to do this.
Well, I think it all comes down to, first of all, you've got to have the right people around you, the support staff around you, and because I'm spending a lot more time with them than I do with my family, because I actually do see them or talk to them probably 10 times more in a day than I would speak to my husband or to my children. So first of all, you've got to have the right people around you. Number 2, I think the culture around your office is very important as well, because if you have the wrong person within your team, that can certainly affect how the rest of the team work. And also, I think I do share a lot of my knowledge, a lot of my listings, and also when I do have a listing or an appraisal, to go to, I will find the right person who will actually join me at that listing appointment as well, because then they are given that opportunity and owners will understand what their role is. I think at the very start, I wasn't very good at it and I was learning from a lot of other selling principles, and I realised, there's a few things I can learn from very successful agents from overseas, and I've been watching and learning from them and speaking within my own group as well, because I'm part of the LJ Hooker group. So they've actually assisted me with that. But once again, it's all about ensuring that everything that you do, I do share. So down to my database of clients, every single one of the reps who are within my team, they've got access to all of them. However, they all have rules, that they need to know what to do and not to overstep the mark. And the other thing is all about being accessible and available to them, because you'll have different agents at different levels within your team. So obviously there's some people that's writing maybe 100,000, there's some who's writing 400,000, there's some writing about 600,000. So once again, you have to speak at the right level and train them at the right level, and making sure that they are all on the same page as you.
I kind of think of real estate in 4 quadrants. There's the marketing and all of that stuff we do to attract an opportunity to list. There's the converting of that listing. There's what we do when we do the job. And then there's what we do with a client when we don't need them. Between transactions, so to speak. So I consider those 4 quadrants. But before we get on to, I want some highlights of some of the best of those 4 quadrants from you, if you could. And I know you and I share a joint passion for the first one, the marketing and the branding. But I wanted to talk to you before that about the thing that overarches them all, and that's work ethic. I've never seen anyone like you as far as your work ethic. Your ability to, I don't know how you do it, but can we talk about that, about work ethic, about putting in hard yards, and how it's been on your journey from, I suppose, the pharmacy days, day one in real estate, through to now?
Definitely it's never been easy, especially when you're transitioning from being a pharmacist to being a real estate agent, because it's such a different job altogether. Obviously being a pharmacist is all about counselling, it's about being in the dispensary and dispensing medication, talking to doctors. However, a lot of people may not recognise real estate as being similar, because they think real estate is very salesy, it's all about sales, 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 you're not really helping people. But I think for me, being a pharmacist is about definitely helping people with their medical condition, helping them with their medications, but with real estate, I do see as being helping people find their next dream home, helping them sell their home so they can actually transact with a lot more net in their pocket, so they come out in front. And at the same time, it could be a very, very sad situation where they're going through a divorce. You're helping, counselling the mum, or who's going to lose maybe the house because of the repossession of the house by the bank. So I see it like that, and I think if you have that mindset, it does allow you to transition into the real estate a little bit easily. But of course, not everybody's coming from my position. So I think the way you would handle the way you transition into real estate is make sure that you just have the right mindset in whatever you do. Mindset is so important, and a lot of people do think that, can I be writing X amount in the next 3 months, 6 months? No, it's taken me a long time to be where I am today. I mean, I still work 10, 12 hours a day. I still work 14 hours a day, so I don't really, I suppose I never had a work-life balance, and that is something some people will say, do you regret it? Definitely. But in that moment, when you ask me, do I really regret it? Sometimes you say, not really, because I've already been there, I've already sacrificed, I can't turn back time anyway, and I've worked really, really hard to be where I am. And of course, when you are starting out in real estate and you think, okay, what is my goal? And I think the main thing is you have to have little bite-sized goals. Don't think that you're going to write 10-fold of what you're doing today. Just make sure it's achievable mini goals. It can be the amount of commission you're writing, or it can be the number of listings you'd like to achieve, or you'd like to sell dearer houses, move into a different suburb, so you are selling in a slightly more expensive suburb. But don't think that things will happen overnight. And I think sustainability is really what I'm seeing at the moment, because the market is changing. So if you don't have the staying power to do what you do, and you think you're going to transact and become an agent who can write, you know, double or triple or quadruple your income overnight, it will not happen. You definitely have to have staying power. And that, I mean, money, for sure. You have to make sure that you have your finance behind you. Number two, you have to be consistent, which means that, you know, you're sustaining your daily consistent job of calling and communicating with people, and, you know, that all plays a part in it.
So can I ask you, actually, I don't know if Naomi asked you when, you know, because at the last time that this happened, Naomi was interviewing you, but I wanted to ask, in that first year, let's say year one, many of us talk about, you know, because I'm going to ask you about, of course, your marketing and branding prowess that, you know, you and I spent so long in the States just exchanging stories, and I'm sitting there going, oh, I love this woman, it's magnificent. But when in that first year, was it prospecting or was it branding that brought you to the forefront in year one?
Branding, definitely branding. But the way I did it was probably, I did prospect. I definitely contacted the telemarketing company who also cold call for me, but I realised that the cold calling conversations were not very good, because obviously I tested them out and asked them, you know, who they called, and I called those people and asked them what they thought. Sometimes the conversations being held is not so good, so you do need to check, you know, who you're paying, and if you are paying them to do your marketing, you do need to make sure that it's value for money, for sure. I definitely did a lot of flyers, a lot of letters, and I looked back at some of my letters and I thought, oh, did I really write that? That was terrible. So obviously I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was trying everything, and of course every month you improve and you think, oh, YouTube, let's just see who's actually doing this and that. So obviously I've attended a few conferences, I listened to different agents, because you realise, oh, there's a big hitter, you know, in Sydney. That's another really big hitter in Melbourne. So you start to listen to what they do. And from there I realised that it's not about prospecting. And of course you have to prospect, you have to call, you have to follow up everybody and let the world know that you are a real estate agent. You want people to support you, but unfortunately a lot of people do not trust a rookie if, let's say, it's your first time out there on the lounge or in the lounge or talking to people. So you have to use the branding of maybe the agency or all the sales the agency has done, so that you actually look very strong as a team. And that's when the team, you know, play is very important. You definitely need to have a very, very good, I suppose, cooperation between your team members, meaning your colleagues who's prepared to help you. And apart from that, the branding, when I talk about branding, it's really about positioning yourself in your marketplace where you are different. So obviously everybody here will have a wow factor or an X factor. So you really want to make sure when you walk into someone's, you know, home, what do you think they will say yes to in order to list with you? You need to think, and every transaction will be different, every listing will be different, every owner's different, so you really need to connect literally within about two minutes, maybe even 1 or 2 minutes. They either like you or they don't like you, and they would have already done so much research about you well before you are invited. And it was interesting, about 3 days ago I went to see this owner. I saw him 4 years ago, and he said to me, obviously I wanted to know, am I up against anybody else? And he said, I've made up my mind 4 years ago. So can you imagine if I wasn't nice to him, because I would not get his business 4 years ago, but I still, you know, said hello to him and constantly just keeping in touch, and I know that I won't be up against anybody else, and I love that. But definitely every time you go back into another listing appointment, you're starting from ground zero again. So every time I go back in, you think, what do I have to do to get that listing? But if you do all the work behind the scenes of prospecting, calling, have trails, and I'm the worst in, you know, putting trails together, because I never had a database, and we've just started properly doing client, you know, trails, and I've got my team helping me, and they go, how did you do it? But obviously it's all about that instantaneous rapport that you create. They've got to like you.
Yeah. What are some of your favourite kind of tactics around the Vivien Yap brand as a personal brand?
Tactics.
Like when I say tactics, what are some of the best marketing ideas? Or some of the best,
okay.
you're sponsoring at Subiaco
Okay,
Field and
got it.
some of those sorts of maybe stuff that isn't normally taught at Real Estate 101.
Got it. I mean, when I started, I obviously didn't have a very big budget that I wanted to spend because I did want to treat real estate as a business. So the way I thought about marketing myself is if I was buying a cafe, I've got to invest in space, in rent, and all the materials to make it a successful cafe. So I thought, well, that would cost me, is it 50,000, 100,000? So in real estate, I thought, well, if I want to be successful, I definitely need to think of a game plan that will make it work because, first of all, I wanted to show my dad and my mum that I'm going to succeed in real estate because they told me do not do real estate. It's definitely a very bad job. And you definitely can't look after your kids.
There's a motivator.
And that's where my brother, who's a very successful oncologist, a gynae oncologist, and a very good surgeon, he goes, you're definitely not getting any referrals from me. And I said, are you kidding me? He said, yep, conflict of interest. So obviously...
That's him.
That's him. But he is referring me now, thank God. But he would not even let me put my pamphlets in his surgery. So that's how motivated I was to show my family that I can obviously try and crack into the real estate business because in the western suburbs it's quite a tough market because majority of the families will have friends and families who's known a real estate agent for 10 years, 20 years. So it's knowing how to cut through all the material that's coming through. So obviously, number one, marketing-wise, I did a lot of different things and they would range from USB keys. I would give away USB keys to everybody I met. So my name is there, my number is there. I would do drink bottles and I'll order thousands of it and my whole office is just filled with them. Moses will know. I'll have like wine holders, leather wine holders with my name and mobile numbers. I'm giving them away. They're good quality things. So if the quality of that item you're giving away is not good, it gets thrown away in the bin. You might as well invest in something of a decent quality that they're going to keep. I've tried notepads, but then everybody was doing notepads. So I thought, okay, summertime, let's order sunshades for the car. And I think we had 5,000. So we were giving them away. But it was really good because I put it up and it goes, Vivien Yap, and your phone number's there. You think, yes, the whole car park has got your name. So it's just being different. And of course, you know, I did a bit of pens, but then everybody were doing pens as well. And then the water bottles, I didn't use those cheap bottles. I invested in good quality ones where, you know, they're the steel, you know, it's a bit dearer, but I just thought it's better value for money. So for me, I look at value for money, not for, you know, quantity. And so that created a good lasting impression. Some cases, you know, I'll be giving teas to people, but they've got to be good quality teas. It just really depends on my mood because sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning I'll be emailing, texting, I've got this really great idea. They go, what, Vivien, stop it. So of course, as I got, you know, a bigger budget, I thought, okay, let's start to do the stadium, you know, and I looked out for what else can I do. So I started to advertise in the Domain Stadium. And it was good because obviously I was starting out again. So I'm quite new in my business at the moment. So literally 12 months of real trading, but 18 months in my new business. So I needed to tell everybody that I'm not actually working in my granny flat, which I was because I did not have an office. But to cut through all that, obviously I was just working in a little area where there's no office space, there's no marketing. I start to invest in a lot of Facebook marketing, a lot of social media. Is very, very targeted. And that marketing was very successful because it just showed that I'm in business literally within a day. So within about, I suppose, a month, I was getting back on my feet and I thought, am I going to be able to do it? Is this a mistake? You know, I should not even think about, you know, being in business. But within about a year, I thought, I'm doing better than I ever thought. So, but I'm not there alone. I'm only there because I've got the support of my team, support of my clients, and without the clients, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I think the branding is really important, but think about the branding within your own suburb, within your own competition. If they're doing something, do the total opposite. And that's what I think is different. I mean, even sometimes we order meals for a few of our clients because it's something different. If they like to go to a circus or something, poor Kelly had to organise tickets. I think, get those tickets now. And she'll go, yeah, I'm getting them, I get them. So it is just different. If Cirque du Soleil's coming, you know, if it is your VIP client, just be different, I think.
I love that. I mean, one of the principles, a bunch of principles there that we can identify is that don't look for how these superstar performers like Chris, like Vivien are different, because there's no tactic in their differences. But when you see things that Vivien is doing that is the same as Chris, that is the same as Tom Carlin, that is the same as Marcus Ciminello, etc., that's where the magic is, when they've got these commonalities. You know, so I certainly love that when they're saying to do the opposite of what everyone else does. If everyone else is saying make more cold calls, find a way to invest. Actually, let me ask you this, Vivien. Chris and Michael Spillane and many of my students, including young Tom Carlin, who I met some years ago, and they've got this rule of thumb of about a 10% marketing budget. You know, if you're wanting, like Tom Carlin said, he wants to do 2 million. In the year I started work with him, he was doing just over 1 million. He said his goal was 2 million. And so he just said, righto, 200,000 is my budget. So this 10% ROI rule of thumb is kind of consistent. But in order to do the numbers you're doing, that sounds like it's a pretty hefty budget. Is that 10% kind of still a good rule of thumb for the guys?
It gets better because your return on investment differs. As you're actually writing bigger numbers, your costs is definitely going to be lower. However, it depends on how clever you are with your negotiations with all these suppliers. And it comes down to, if you think you're spending 60 or 80,000 on something, you can negotiate it really well. So it just depends on where you're getting your materials or your suppliers, where are they supplying you from. And it's not 10%. It does work out to be about 5, I'd say. But it just comes down as you write bigger numbers. So you get
economies of scale as the numbers go up. Nice.
For sure.
It's nice food for thought for us. Well, not for me. I put everything in. You know, I don't know if you've seen, when you hire some of the crazy people I've hired, all the profit goes back into doing my next thing. So it's all good. But for you guys, it's great that 10% is, actually, you know what? Other businesses, like you've owned a pharmacy, right? And some of you guys have owned other businesses. All the other businesses in the world are looking at us saying, 10%? 10x ROI? You guys are freaking, they're jealous of our 10%.
I do actually invest back in a lot of training. So instead of spending, let's say, the whole 10% on pure marketing, I do have several coaches. I do reinvest back in the business. I make sure that my staff do get trained as well. So we are actually from there getting value for money. So I am reinvesting it slightly differently.
Understood. Yeah, understood. Well, I've invested in every coach in the world. They're all, I added it up. 7,000 hours I've listened to people. You probably could have got the job done in 700 hours. That shows I'm the dumbest person in this room because it took me 7,000 bloody hours. But so let's go to the next quadrant real quick. What are some of your favourite, once that marketing and branding that you've invested in has walked into someone saying, hey, Vivien, thanks so much. Say it's not someone from 4 years ago that made up their mind and you followed up and it was just a lay down misère. Say it was a colder one and they didn't really know you as well. Have you got any cool tactics that help you convert in that second quadrant?
Okay, what I tend to do is I do ask a lot of questions before I go in. And the more questions you ask and the more open they are, the more easy it is, for me to try and build rapport instantaneously when you meet them, because face-to-face, of course, is much easier than it is on the phone. So you try and find out a little bit more about them. And obviously, if you have heard about them, because obviously in the area that I work in, I can find out what they do for a living because you Google, you can easily find out. So it does help, and obviously you can check what they do. And sometimes they ask you to attend their home to do an appraisal quite late in the evening. Being I'm driving, you think, okay, 7 o'clock, who am I going to? You've got to do your homework as well, being a mum, you know, so you just got to make sure, you've got to be careful. The other thing too I tend to do is I'll find out what they like, or do they have kids? Because obviously I'm a mum, I'm a mum with 2 boys. So I'll try and find out, you know, how old are the children, and if they go to the same school, if they don't, or do they like cooking? I mean, it's just very, very, and you obviously will walk through the kitchen and you think, that smells really good, what are you cooking? And it's just really conversational stuff. It's not rocket science at all. It's building rapport should come naturally to real estate agents, I believe. If you can't build rapport instantaneously, we're in the wrong business, because we need to sell, you know, we need to sell the house, we need to sell the fact that you can sell their home, and I think building rapport needs to be picked up very quickly. And a few things that I've done in the past when I'm trying to get the listing, obviously you ask them what's prompted them to call you in the first place, and they'll say, oh, because we saw this, or in fact my friend recommended. So immediately you actually have a connection. But I tend to ask those questions: what prompted you to call me? Another thing, you know, do you have a time frame? I do actually ask that, because then you know, okay, what are they planning? Yeah. So I do have a lot of open-ended questions. What are your plans? Have you thought about this? And they start chatting to you. And so it's more like just gravitating towards a more friendly conversation, not about getting the listing.
And again, I noticed commonality when Chris Gilmore first started. I think he might have done a Lee Woodward 2-day training course where he learnt a better listing presentation, but for most of his career, he did exactly that. He'd just turn up with an iPad and just chat. And he'd just use rapport to do the job for him. Because in his mind, it was all done at the marketing stage that come through to that. One thing I noticed about you when we were in the States, and now we were in the States at like breakfast time. That means it was like 4 a.m. back here. And I remember you texting back, and I don't know which person it was here, whether it was Moses or who it was, but you were doing a deal.
Yes.
And your team was up and working on your business and doing a deal at 4 or 5 a.m. or something. Tell us about, as a leader, how we can all we're all fired up and we're all motivated and we're all doing the big thing. How have you managed to get a team that is up and not only awake at 4 a.m, but working on your deals at 4 a.m? As a leader, some of the principals in here are asking, how the hell did you pull that off, woman?
I think it comes down to the DNA, you know, that you have as an agent or as a, you know, so you call as a director. I've always perceived my team to be as committed as I am, because if you take on the job, you expect to complete the job, be it, you know, selling or chasing a buyer. And obviously the deals that we were doing are very, very hard. The difference in price could be 500,000, 800,000 difference in price. It's very hard to close. And this property was on the market for how long? 4 years. So obviously by the time it comes to you, you're the 4th agent. And I don't want to be a statistic to be the 4th agent, if possible. So when we do get a buyer, we really need to make it happen. And obviously, this was actually Phoebe I was talking to, and she is amazing. So ultimately, we were working the buyer together, but at the same time, the buyer, you know, travels and the seller's sometimes traveling, and the timing obviously is crucial. And we do wake up really early in the morning, we do sleep late, but then after 11 days of, you know, tough work, I crash, and I do crash, and she does as well. I think we all need to have a break occasionally, but for some reason she's a robot. She doesn't need a break, so she'll have a break very soon. So I think it's all about, you know, to me it's about doing the deal, but we also need to be accountable to the deals that we're doing. So accountable to the owner. The owner expects something done. They need to know that you're accessible. And I'm always accessible. So if I'm not available on the phone, they can text me, they can WhatsApp me, I will get back to them. So if it's really urgent, you know, they'll text me once, twice, and the owners know, because obviously this owner I've worked with before, but she did say to me in the end, I wish I used you in the first place and not, you know, 3rd, 4th time. But that's because she's owed a lot of favours to different agents. So obviously, it all comes about. But we sold it in the end. But I think it's about what you do. I mean, everyone loves to do transactions. I think, you know, as much as you say, I love real estate, I still think money is important. You know, when there is a transaction to be done and it's worth, you know, 5,000, or it could be 18,000 to some, it could be 50,000 to some, you know, that's a lot of money. And I think, you know, you've got to get the deal done to get paid.
I'd love to hear your just initial thoughts on, I suppose, the role of the female in real estate. There's an ongoing debate about women can succeed, women, you know, are handcuffed, and everywhere in between. What's your take, you know, here on International Women's Day on your role? Is there any difference about being a woman in real estate? Or is there just no context, that it's just a person? How do you see that?
Well, I do believe that we can do anything, we can achieve anything. The sky is really the limit for us. It's definitely all about the mindset of how we feel, what we can possibly achieve. And definitely there's lots and lots of things and roles that we play in at home, at work, in the community. But one of the most important things is we just need to have that firm mindset that you must believe in yourself. With persistence, with big dreams, you can definitely achieve it. If you have very average dreams, of course, you may not achieve those dreams and become below average. But if you've got some phenomenal, big, massive dreams, at least you can achieve above average dreams. That's how I look at things.
Yeah, and it is fascinating to me that you certainly haven't let gender even come into your world. What was funny, when I was a sales manager and I was recruiting, I looked at the stats in Queensland, and 8 out of the top 10 real estate agents at that time were female. And I wondered if, at that time, is that because of the innate female ability to build rapport? Because literally, there were 2 blokes in the top 10 and 8 women. And I thought that was fascinating for that time. And it was around 2006 or 7. So certainly to me, that doesn't sound like a disadvantage. In fact, I would say that rapport ability is an advantage in our industry.
I do believe that women do have the innate ability to multitask, because obviously that's just something that we have to do as mothers or as daughters. You know, you're always in charge of all the booking of appointments or getting the handyman happening. If you're a housewife, you will also need to run the household. So I think because of that, we meet a lot of people. It does help, and of course, being a female, you can wear lovely dresses, lovely clothes to make sure you are also utilising what you can. If you know that you've got beautiful hair, you know, make it look good. Or if you know that you've got a great figure, wear a beautiful outfit, professional outfit that accentuates, you know, your assets. Not to say that you have to wear the wrong type of clothing, but at the same time, I think females do have an advantage, and to me, use it what you can. And that's just really my take on it, from when I see different females who work as real estate agents, and they really maximize their potential, and especially the successful ones who know how to maximize their time, their ability. It really makes a big difference, and we do stand, I believe, you know, further apart from men, although a lot of debate has certainly come into how unfairly paid we are. Well, we just need to stand above the crowd, be the cream of the crop, and show them.
Yeah, certainly for me, I've never been the, let's say, the skillfulest. See, that even shows I can't even speak properly. I've never used kind of skill. I've always used harder work for me to shine, because that's an asset I've got, an ability to wake up 2 hours before my more skilled competitor. But we've always got an asset that we can rely upon. So I love that take from you. Now, Vivien, and you mentioned mindset before. You've been in a market here in WA that hasn't exactly been boom conditions. You know, I'd love it if you could share with us what maybe some of the daily disciplines you've got to have maintained your success in a market that properties haven't been just flying off the shelf. So there are some people that have said that a lot of agents in WA have left the industry. You've gone from strength to strength. As an astute fan of yours, I've been keeping an eye on how you've been going. Are there any mindset tips or daily disciplines you can give for our eastern states friends that might be helpful for them, having lived it for the last couple of years? Well, if they're about to go through it, what should they be prepared for and what should they be doing?
Well, for me, I always go back to basics, because going back to basics really makes you, I suppose, more disciplined than most, and always be very, very aware that it's not that easy. Every single transaction that we have has not actually happened, or it hasn't just fallen on our lap. There's a lot of work that has to go with it, such as the buyer's journey needs to be mapped out. So we have met the buyers from 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 3 years ago. Where are they at? How do we really get them to be progressed on to a buyer now? Or how do we get them to become a vendor now? So there's a lot of thought that go into this, and it's all about the processing of their journey. And when I talk about that, it means, okay, we are calling them daily if it's going to be something we have to do because they require daily communication. It could be weekly communication if that is required. So once again, it's all about the quality of your connection, quality of your relationship, and that just needs to be, done on a regular basis. Number two, and I think you have to be very, very patient with every single thing that you do. Nothing's going to happen overnight. If you think, oh my gosh, I've got a buyer for this property, just when you say that, they've lost interest, they bought something else. So, and I think you just do not need to be fearful of failure. Failure is actually a really good thing for me because it drives me to work a lot harder. It drives me to work harder and smarter as well. So we just need to make sure that the daily disciplines will be, of course, your calls, your connectivity, and also your do not be lazy. There's absolutely no shortcuts at all in this life, in this world of real estate, because if you become lazy for that one moment, the next agent will take up your piece of the pie, which is really your bread and butter. And one good sale will lead to another good sale because then you're known in the area. But there's definitely not one particular way to do something, but it's just what you're comfortable with. But the other thing is, do not procrastinate. I'm a big procrastinator. And
wow,
I do find...
You wouldn't know it by your action steps you take. You've found a solution to it if you are.
That's right. And for procrastinators out there, if there are any, I actually find that it's really good to have someone make you accountable. Make sure that you've got someone who will remind you on a daily basis what you need to do, as well as big projects that you have good intentions to do. Then if you have someone else leading that for you and reporting back to you, then at least you know that it will get done. And the other thing is, have micro little goals, not big massive goals to say, I would like to write $1 million. It's not about that. It's about that growth that you would like to actually achieve. It could be just a 10% growth or a 20% growth. Don't create goals that is not achievable, because before you know it, you will just quit very quickly and you'll go back to your bad habits again. It's like brushing your teeth every morning or making your bed every morning. Those are your sort of daily chores that you will do. You don't even think about it, you just do it. So is there any way that you can make yourself do something, making that your daily chores, and you will just do it without even thinking about it? So you're just going to make it very seamless and integrate that into your daily routine.
Wow, I love that when you sort of spit such knowledge bombs like that, and I think, yeah, that's kind of what I do. It's funny that I have my team, and they must get so annoyed with me. They SMS me the daily figures on when I'm running a big event, and I know how many people need to be at that event for it to be a winner, and they must get so frustrated. I tell them to SMS me how many tickets sold, how many left to sell, and how many per day that needs to equal. So I don't have to worry about filling a 2,000 seat arena. It's just, I need 5 today. just 5. I can do 5.
Yes.
But then before we know it, we're sitting there sharing the stage, high-fiving with Arnold Schwarzenegger because we've done it. You know,
Yes.
it's crazy.
Exactly.
So we were talking about little mini goals. What's your take on the bigger goals? Like, what's your take? You mentioned setting goals and having big dreams. How important is that when it comes to that daily grind of perhaps the upcoming pain of a less than buoyant market?
Okay, well, that's for me. It might be different for other people, but the way I set my goals is that I have a big goal, which is almost sometimes you think it's not achievable, but I think I visualize, what I would love to achieve, and sometimes the more you visualize it, the more you actually orientate yourself to do the things that will help you get there faster. And when I look at a big goal, for example, for me, I look at personal goals, which is to do with my family. I do look at my work goal, which is to do with my fellow colleagues, my team. I do also look at my own personal growth, which is to do with my own personal goals. So I break them in little bits. So, for example, I don't enjoy exercising. It's my pet hate, but...
And yet you go a couple of times a week.
Yeah, but I know that I have to do it, but I'm always an all or nothing person. So either I do it every day or I don't do it. But I know that from previous experience, I'll always go every day and then I'll quit. Literally in about a month, I'll just won't do it again. So for me, I just wanted to make it more like a daily discipline. So I just know, do it slowly. At least I will stick to it. And, it's been 3 months and I'm very proud of myself. It's not only about no more than an hour at a time, but at least I know it's happening. Or with your call sessions, I know that I can't just sit there and make 150 calls in one session or 50 calls in one session. I break it down. Maybe I have to do 10 and then have a break, do something else, do my next 10, and then have a break and then do another 10. But it's really what works for you. And then you might have your family goals, for example. But if I say to myself, I'd like to make sure I do really well, and if I do really well, I'd like to do a big trip. And it could be a trip that I would never even intend on going. Now it's more like on my bucket list. So I've listed 10 places which is on my bucket list, which is really not for me because I'm not adventurous at all. But then I've put those things down to make sure, will I get out of my comfort zone? So you're constantly challenging yourself. And if you know that you can achieve, things that's beyond your comfort zone, it will become easier and easier, such as, talking to Glenn now. I absolutely do not enjoy being interviewed at all. But I think, because you know that it will be good for you eventually, the more you do it, the better you get. It's like practice makes perfect.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I appreciate you getting out of your comfort zone to hang out. But and you've done it a few times with me, with Naomi, and we certainly are honoured that has been the case.
Thank you.
What would be the broadest advice you would give to an agent just starting in Brisbane, where it's going to be tougher in the coming market, both marketing, prospecting, skills? What would be the area you'd focus on that you would suggest that person should dedicate their time to?
I think what I would probably suggest is you need to meet people. When I talk about meeting people, it could be in the real estate industry where you are really doing the home opens with your colleagues. And when you do meet people, really, really connect with them. Be very, very much in tune to listen in on what their needs are. If you listen really well, you will take the next step to respond to what they need in terms of buying a home or selling a home. What help do they really need? Are they only researching? So I think if you do listen well, that will lead you to the next step. And in terms of prospecting, I think that is very important. But once again, you need to know who you're prospecting. You might be calling the wrong people. So there could be numbers there, cold calling. It could be people you meet. But if you're not listening to them, you'd be calling them and not getting a result because they've already sold their home, and in fact they're only researching for a family member. It's not really for them. So are you asking the right questions? And I think the other thing is you need to be very genuine and very passionate about what you do. If they don't sense that in their conversation with you, there will be no future business. And I think, once again, it all comes down to how much effort you put into that person. It will come back tenfold.
I love how you mentioned that the sky's the limit. There is no glass ceiling. It's just about how hard we want it, how bad we want it, and how hard we're willing to work to get it. So my thanks to you, Vivien, and congratulations on the epic career so far. And I love that you're just warming up.
Thanking you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening in, Vivien. Thanks for fitting us in.
Thank you.
Until next time, folks, bye for now. Wow. Well, there you go. I hope you liked the episode. If you like that, then what you need to do is you need to subscribe. You need to get more of this craziness because we got more are coming. I'm never standing still, and we've got so many more guests. We've got so many more strategies, more out-of-the-box thinking. So if you haven't subscribed, literally, you're like throwing away thousands of dollars. Because I tell you, if you haven't subscribed, you don't come back. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to find you, I'm going to market to you, and I'm going to charge you for the very stuff that on this podcast we give away for free. So whack that subscribe button on whatever your favourite podcast weapon of destruction is, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.